welcome. I know we are between folks and lunch, potentially, so bear with me. We are going to talk about the security operations agent sort of suite that we have built here at Google SecOps. Some kind of cool lessons that we've learned in that process, have a conversation with one of our customers about what they've seen in their SOC and how they kind of work on these problems, and go through some lessons learned and hopefully have an engaging conversation. A little about myself, I run one of the product portfolios for Google SecOps. I'm going to be joined today by one of my colleagues who's kind of an expert in all the agents that we built. She will talk through a couple examples of them, show you a demo, and kind of show you where the rubber meets the road. And then Eric's going to come on stage at the end. We'll do kind of a little chat, get some insight from Shopify on what they're doing with agents to actually actively defend against attackers in the Shopify environments. So that's the plan for today. I think it's useful to start this conversation looking a little bit at how the threat landscape is changing. I know this kind of versions of this slide are probably going to be seen throughout the week, but the data, I think, speaks for itself here. It's very interesting to think through. The themes for us to think about in general are that the economy of attackers and the ability for attackers to kind of launch with a lot more speed against an attack surface has really shifted dramatically over the course of the last 12 to 24 months. What this means in general to us is that more advanced attacks that used to take potentially weeks to kind of develop campaigns against are now kind of, that window is now pulled down to potentially days of time or hours of time. This has just led to like more asymmetry in the offensive defensive kind of shift. And I think our view here is that at least at Google, the need to accelerate agent adoption in the security center in general, whether it's centralized or distributed, is just getting greater and greater. And you've got to figure out ways to kind of thoughtfully apply agents if you want to kind of go at the way attackers are leveraging agents or AI in the real world to come after your enterprise. And I think the other piece of this is that not only has the speed of attacks really accelerated a lot, but the attack surface has changed pretty significantly or evolved pretty significantly, especially the LLM and agent-centered attack surface. So you have a lot of additional attack types that you're seeing in the wild. I think kind of both on the campaigns that Mandiant has seen and the volume of these campaigns this year to date, and like that incredible increase compared to last year speaks to this a lot. Like we're seeing a lot more AI-focused attacks, like against AI infrastructure or agents in applications. So this means like both speed has increased, cost has gone down, and the attack surface has grown, right? So like the way you're addressing this in the security ops center, I think needs to start to shift, or at least your thinking needs to start to shift. And a lot of the work that we're doing on building and shipping agents in our products is attempting to kind of address these key pain points. So as we look at like how do you operationalize this, and maybe before we get into some of these agents in the wild, I think it was worth discussing some of the pieces that we've learned from early kind of feedback from customers and operationalizing agents in the wild. So a few pieces to kind of talk about on this slide. We've seen that building kind of sidecar experiences in whether it's kind of an IDE environment or a chat interface is very challenging for users kind of from an adoption standpoint. So this integration of workflow has been a key piece that we've found we've needed to correct for and do a lot more of in order to successfully operationalize agents. So that's kind of area number one. I think the second and third area to understand here is that the explainability of what agents are doing in security, I think more than maybe any other area, or at least at the same level as some top areas, like maybe data analytics, is extremely important. So we have taken a very first principled approach to ensuring, traces and logs and the analysis that agents are doing for security are written out and kind of fully provided to an analyst to understand. And I think this also parlays into how useful are agents in the wild, like how can your SOC identify and understand how much this is accelerating potentially productivity or defense posture. So this is, I think, boils down to both like the usefulness of these applications for you, but also like how you measure that for users, the feedback loop of disposition, being able to take that disposition and improve an agent. So if we're saying, hey, this is a true positive, and you say, I don't agree, right? And we keep doing that over and over again, we're gonna not only maybe lose your trust, but we're not kind of learning from these problems and improving our loop. So we've taken this very seriously in a lot of the work that we built, and I think integrating that into anything you operationalize is a key piece of making sure these are successful. And this last piece is really around organizational contextual understanding. So if you build generic capability for security and these agents are not contextually aware, generally they're not going to be operational at a level that you would expect to trust. So everything from kind of org-specific context settings and understanding of past disposition history of cases or alerts, even to like contextual awareness of environments and networks is really key to successfully operationalizing and meeting, I think, the needs of real SOCs in production. And we've seen a lot of this in our early testing. Wendy will speak to this a little bit. Like a lot of our focus in the future is on adding elements of customization and contextual awareness to ensure that customers kind of can tune the knobs the way they need to in order to operationalize this effectively. All right, so before we get into demos, I like to kind of talk through like strategically what have we formed from all of these learnings? Like where is the product headed? Where is kind of Google Cloud security? Where is our mind on agents? So these are kind of the three big pillars that we're focused on, kind of agentic data management, from onboarding to parsing to pipeline management, detection from a kind of engineering and tuning standpoint, but also from an ongoing threat hunt and attack campaign standpoint, so both a threat hunting agent and detection engineering agent. And then the piece we're going to talk the most about, kind of alert, triage, and investigation, and automation and response. So we've systematically kind of deconstructed how we look at the SOC operating, and we're going after specific use cases of agents, building them to kind of a point that we have user trust, we give you the controls that you need, and we'll talk a little more about the future after the demo. But then ultimately kind of releasing them to you to build on top of or customize the way you need. Ultimately, like each one of these loops is something that a human or a set of humans are doing today. And our view here strategically is that if we can kind of pick each one and successfully go after it and get you to the level that you need of trust and understanding with these agents, we will start to shift that narrative from like constantly playing catch up on this attack surface that's increasing to one where maybe you have some more time back in order to focus on the narrow number of findings or threats that are actually impacting your organization. So kind of a good parlay to my colleague Wendy, who's going to talk about the triage and investigation agent and give you a demo.
Thank you, Spencer. Hi, everyone. So really excited to be here today to share a little bit about our triage and investigation agent. This was our very first agent that we launched into GA just a few weeks ago. Now, within 60 seconds, the triage and investigation agent delivers 3 key outcomes. It delivers a decisive verdict, letting you know, is an alert true positive or false positive? Do you need to escalate it to a case, or can you close it? Second, with that decisive verdict, the triage and investigation agent provides a transparent timeline of its entire investigation. We know the security practitioner's mantra is never trust, always verify, and we allow you to do just that. The agent provides the goal, the analysis, and the results of every step in its investigation. And third, with that definitive verdict, that transparent timeline, the agent provides a set of next steps to help your team get going quickly with the response and remediation portions of an investigation. So I bet you're wondering, well, how does all this magic happen? So the Triage agent utilizes the latest Gemini models, Vertex AI infrastructures, and tools purposely built for security use cases to do the heavy lifting of alert triage and investigation. So first, the Triage agent creates a plan for its investigation. This plan is based off of Mandiant best practices. And then the agent, after it makes that plan, it begins to investigate. It goes and it gathers context from within SecOps, from within Google Threat Intelligence, to really understand the who, what, where, when, and why of an alert. So first we plan, and then we investigate. Third, we reason. The agent understands all of the context that it has just autonomously gathered and uses that to come up with that true positive, false positive verdict, the transparent timeline, and next steps. So let's just talk a little bit more about the tools that the agent uses to gather that context. The Triage and Investigation agent has the ability to search all of your security telemetry within Google SecOps. Your team no longer needs to write, run, and analyze search results. The Triage agent will do that quickly for you and just tell you the output. The Triage and Investigation agent will also take the critical step of contextualizing indicators of compromise, so IPs, URLs, and hashes, with data from Google Threat Intelligence. The Triage and Investigation agent can also reconstruct process trees and decode command lines, all to get you to that decisive verdict of true positive, false positive as fast as possible. So I won't read this quote to you, but I think it's a really interesting one to discuss, in that we have the Triage agent running on millions of alerts across thousands of customers, and what we're finding is it really is able to slash that mean time to respond because it is embedded directly into workflows. It's not a bolt-on, it's right where teams are focusing and functioning and performing autonomously. So let us take a look at what it's like to be a SOC analyst in a SOC that's agentic. So what we're looking at now is Google SecOps. Here we're looking at the cases in Google SecOps. These are all of the cases for an organization that have been bubbled up for our team to look at. But I will filter for cases assigned to me, and I see here this case, multiple anomalous cloud behaviors. It is a critical priority, Gemini has already investigated it, and there's a pending action assigned for me to do. From here, I'll click into the case and understand it a little bit further. From our case summary, I can get oriented with what's happening in this case very, very quickly, really helping me get started as fast as possible. From our case summary, I can see that the Triage and Investigation agent has already investigated 2 out of 2 alerts in this case, all without me having to do anything, and has found these alerts to be true positive. But I want to understand what's actually happened. So I'll take a look at the case summary, and I'll understand that this entire case started with an insecurely configured MCP server that was used as a launching pad for a remote actor to gain access to my GCP project, and then some of my virtual machines were abused, and we definitely want to look into this further. So I'll look at the case activity, which is a feed of what's already happened in this case. I can see here that a playbook has been attached to this case. I can also see that the Triage and Investigation agent has started to investigate the alerts, right? We see it's investigated this malicious MCP activity alert, as well as the multiple anomalous cloud behaviors alert. From here, I can see that there's a pending action assigned to me, something I need to do. This pending action is telling me I need to rotate the service account credential. But I don't know about you, before I rotate credentials, I like to understand what I'm doing. So we'll go ahead and drill into it. We can also look into Gemini's suggestions for further investigation. But from here, we'll scroll down through our timeline. This threat timeline gives us a sense of everything that's happened in the case, both things that were done with automation, by our agents, and by humans. So here we're taking a look at Gemini's investigation of the first alert in this case. Gemini has given us that true positive verdict, that decisive verdict we talked about a second ago. Gemini has also summarized the alert for us. So even before getting to the investigation, we can quickly understand what happened. Here, we learn an adversary was able to escape an LLM application sandbox then executed arbitrary shell commands on our host, and they were able to do this because they used command chaining. So here we have a full list of Gemini's steps, everything that Gemini did as part of the investigation. Multiple steps leveraging multiple tools, whether that was gathering context from SecOps, from Google Threat Intelligence, running searches, even pulling in third-party context from other data sources and analyzing that as part of our investigation. So here we see every step that Gemini took. To orient you, the first line in each step is Gemini's goal of that step. So you can really understand Gemini's thought process through that investigation. You never have to open every single step, but we found that users want to understand what Gemini was thinking and why. So for this step, we can see that Gemini did the initial triage, gathering context from within SecOps to understand, okay, is this alert even something worth investigating? Or do I know from previous investigations that this is likely a false positive? Here, Gemini decided to investigate further. So from there, Gemini went on and gathered additional context from SecOps, trying to understand all of the activities around the indicators and users in the environment. One of the steps that Gemini took was to call Google Threat Intel to understand if one of the IPs it saw in the investigation was malicious. And it said yes, Mandiant investigators have found this IP to be malicious, known to be associated with bad activity. And so Gemini continued on. So from here, Gemini started to query the entity context graph in SecOps. Within SecOps, we store all of the data around the entity's normal activities so we can understand when there's variations. So here, we wanted to see, was this IP ever seen before in our environment, right? If we have a malicious IP spinning up VMs, we want to know if it's been seen before. And if it hasn't, that's a red flag, which we just saw. Gemini continues to search for more and more things within SecOps. For example, we take a look to understand what other activity this IP has been associated with. We see that this IP, again, is mentioned spinning up additional virtual machines. Now, the interesting thing here is that there's 44 events that triggered this analysis, but I didn't have to write this search or analyze the results. Gemini did it all for me. Lastly, Gemini wanted to understand a little bit more about the activity within my GCP project, right? All of this activity is happening within the same GCP project. And Gemini makes the step to say, okay, I wonder who's been logging into this project. Is anything silly happening, anything nefarious? So Gemini writes a fairly broad search, pulls back hundreds of events, and is like, yes, there is malicious activity. We're seeing logins from countries we don't normally see logins from China, Bulgaria, Germany, the Netherlands, which is not common for our organization, so that this is likely not something that's meant to happen. It's probably not also insider threat. It's something happening from an outside source. So again, really saving us time in stitching that all together. Gemini continues to do some additional searches. And then we get to the second alert in this case, which after what we've just seen in the first one, I definitely want to investigate the second one further. So here we have our multiple anomalous cloud behaviors alert. From here, we know that this alert was triggered due to the combination of external persistence, startup scripts, and service account token abuse within our GCP project, indicating an active compromise. And again, I have my investigation summary here. But I want to do something different here. I'm going to invoke my Gemini Agentic chat within SecOps. Within SecOps, we have our Gemini assistant. For those using SecOps, you know we've had that for a while. But we've done something new and exciting. We've enabled our chat within SecOps to have access to all of the SecOps MCP tools, meaning that it can read any data that's in SecOps and available via MCP. It's also context aware. It understands that I'm investigating this case. It will recommend prompts for me if I wanted to use those. But here I'll say, summarize this investigation for me. Just another way to interact with Gemini so I could use it however I'd like. Here, Gemini says, okay, there were 3 malicious IPs used to create Google Compute Engine instances in your project. They're modifying metadata and script values. And this was all performed via the same service account token. So because we have the malicious activity all from the same service account token, I want to go ahead and rotate that service account credential. I have some options here from Gemini about next steps that I can take, but I'm going to go ahead from here and click on the playbook that has assigned this pending action to me. So within Google SecOps, we have the option to trigger agents either via playbook, automatically or manually. So you could just click run investigation, you could preset settings, or you can use a playbook. Here I've built a playbook. I've built this playbook to trigger every time an alert fires due to anomalous activity in my cloud. I then have the triage agent as part of this playbook. So the playbook has 2 branches. So after the triage, I'm sorry about that. Uh-oh. My bad. I will just talk to the end of that, so I'm not replaying it. So the triage agent operates within a playbook. The playbook has 2 branches. It says if the triage agent says false positive, close the case. If the triage agent says true positive, continue to investigate. Update the case stage, assign it to an analyst, and ask that analyst to investigate and rotate the service account credential. And that's what it assigned to me, and that's how we close the case. Now, from here, now that we've seen what the triage and investigation agent can do in action, I want to talk about what's next for the triage and investigation agent, as well as the other agents that we're building within SecOps. So the longer that an analyst is on your team, right, the more they understand how your organization does business, the more they understand the normal activity, the more they understand how to talk to your team, right, the more effective they become. And we want to give the ability to become more effective over time to our agents. So we'll do that in 4 key ways. First, we'll enable organizations to give specific instructions to our agents. Right now, the agents plan and investigate based on Mandiant's best practices. We're going to expand that so they can plan and investigate based on your organization's best practices as well, all to make the agent more effective. Also, we'll enable the agent to learn from your environment. So that way, the longer the agent's in your environment, the smarter it can become. It can understand how your team is providing feedback, closing cases, running searches, and making decisions. It will then store that information in its memory and use it to make more informed decisions going forward, all to make the agent more effective. We'll also enable the agent with the ability to bidirectionally communicate. So I just showed you the triage and investigation interacting with our Gemini chat. Over time, the agent will continue to be able to communicate with us. We'll be able to give it feedback, ask it questions, and it will even be able to take instructions via chat, all to make it more effective. And lastly, the agent will read and write directly to the case object within SecOps, so we have humans and agents all working together in one single place. And that is what we are going to do to make the agents more effective over time and more effective team members of your SOC. So now back to you, Spencer.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay, very cool stuff. So before we talk to Eric, I wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about kind of the expansion of the agent ecosystem that we're building, as well as plenty of partners and other vendors are introducing their own agents. Many customers are building their own agents. So this sort of gets to the question of like, what do I do with a first-party agent that you have built and introduced? How do I augment that with my own agents? What does this ecosystem look like? And I know there's also some tremendous announcements on the main stage today about kind of the evolution of Gemini Enterprise and Vertex and other things that are coming. So this will probably continue to evolve and need to be updated after this week. But in general, the way to think about this is that we're taking an approach of building these very kind of high quality outcomes in our first party agents. So the triage agent, the third party context agent, I think was briefly shown as sort of a context gatherer of external context. Threat hunting and detection engineering agents are also 2 critical agents that are being introduced. There's another session tomorrow that's going to talk about those. So the outcomes of those customers should really trust and rely on, and be able to augment, as Wendy kind of said, and customize. And then from there, if you want to build additional workflows out of the product, right, those agents are going to be exposed through A2A protocols, through our existing MCP server ecosystem. So we have a very robust SecOps MCP server that's now generally available. It's got 50 to 60 tools today. We're going to be adding additional tools and augmenting with other capabilities in the future. So you really have all of the controls you need to take our agents, wrap them in additional workflows in really any client that you want. your own client or any of the best-in-breed clients. You can call other agents from there, other MCP servers from there, and sort of customize cross-product workflows or potentially cross-organization workflows that you want in order to really kind of optimize and get the most out of these tools in your environment. I think this is a great kind of lead up to a conversation with Eric. So I'm going to bring kind of Eric on stage, and we're going to talk a bit about how Shopify is working with agents in their worlds, and maybe learn some, and then we'll hold a few questions at the end for folks.
Cool, thank you.
Welcome, Eric.
All right, hi. So my name is Eric Herscovich. I'm a senior engineer on the security detection and response team at Shopify. Been there for about 6 years, spent a lot of time working on kind of all things insider threat, building out some cool stuff. More recently in the past year as well, been working on building out kind of all things agentic AI, and more recently as well, working as kind of like a design partner with Google over here for the cool and exciting agentic SOC.
Cool. Maybe we can start with like how Shopify is using AI, agentic AI kind of today in your world and what you've seen.
Yeah, so at Shopify, we've kind of been all in on agentic AI for kind of the past year. The guidance we got from our leadership was kind of go push the boundaries, see what we can do. So in that regard, like we're everything we do, we're kind of thinking like, how does AI fit into that like detection and response mandate? So what we've seen in this like presentation here, we're like very much aligned with like that agentic SOC. Like I saw a lot of you taking pictures of all those different agents and stuff like that. That's kind of exactly how we're envisioning it. So what we've done internally as well is kind of start investigating like, what does that look like for us? We've started building out like an agentic framework, and we're looking at things such as like detection. So with AI, you can kind of start like using like the AI as the basis for detection, and we're kind of doing some cool stuff in terms of looking at like holistic behavior patterns. So we're saying, for this kind of chunk of events, does this kind of like make sense for this entity, and kind of like digging into that, saying, is this high risk behavior? Is this true positive, false positive? What we're also doing is kind of trying to support our analysts by building stuff that they can start like dispatching, such as like an investigation agent, to kind of speed up their workflows and see where we can like reduce that time it takes to triage an alert and reduce kind of that like dwell time and so on. In that regard, though, I think everything we're building, we're kind of building on that Google fabric, so with like that SecOps MCP, like Google Threat Intelligence, Gemini models. So I think in that like it's really exciting to see what's going on here, because Google is very well suited to build this. They're kind of vertically integrated. You have the first party like SecOps, you have the Gemini models, you have like GTI kind of backing you. So I think it's really exciting to see kind of what's to come there.
Awesome. So I guess we have kind of a lot of industry peers here. Any kind of advice on how you've seen operationalizing these, implementing them? Like what's been easy, what's been tricky, like where do you need to watch for landmines in that process?
Yeah, I think like at this point, like we've seen attacks are increasing. I think like using agentic AI in the SOC is becoming like an operational necessity, but it's hard to kind of experiment with that when there's always like a fire going on, or there's always something to do in the SOC. Especially if you start trying to build these very complex systems, it's just like a hard thing to do. That being said, I think it's really important you start experimenting with it, because everyone uses AI differently. Every SOC will use it differently. Each analyst in your SOC will use it differently. That human-computer interaction is very kind of individualized. So I think like for people looking to at least take that first step, I think like the triage agent, what we see here is like a very good first step, because that's agentic AI right in front of you where you're already working. And I think taking that first step is like absolutely something worth doing. Now, for those kind of working kind of beyond that and building, like seeing what can be done internally, I think like you hear this all the time, but context is key. Now, you don't want to like overload these things with information, but you want to make sure that like the relevant information is accessible. So think about like what internal knowledge can you expose? At Shopify, we have like our kind of internal data store, and that's just accessible to our agents via MCP. Also connecting, again, I'll say it, the SecOps MCP, but making sure your agents can actually query the data in your data store. I think as well, creating like a sharing culture for like analysts has been something that worked really well at Shopify. The kind of expectation is that our analysts are using agentic AI to speed themselves up. So for us, we literally created like a Slack channel just for them to kind of talk about their sharing or talk about their learnings, what they're doing, what they're implementing. And we found out they're like really good at kind of like accelerating off of each other. For kind of like, for I guess program leaders in engineering, like think about how does, like what are those super high volume alerts that you're struggling to triage? Or what would you build if like volume was not a concern? When you start like thinking about those problems, you can start kind of diving into this like agentic era of detection. So I think like if there's one thing to like take out of this, is think about like, it's that mindset shift of like, okay, what if I had 1,000 analysts? What if I had 1,000,000 analysts? What can I start detecting? How fast can I move? And I think you start like unlocking a lot of detections that like otherwise you just cannot really like do.
Cool. So maybe I'll ask the question no one wants to think about is like, how do you think this is going to change how we're all operating in 2 or 3 years? And like, are you trying to work yourself out of a job, right? Is I think the thing that, you know, a lot of folks I talk to think about. You know, what are your thoughts in kind of that future area?
Yeah, I think like the models are improving so fast. I think if we like look back to like a year ago and look where we are today, it's kind of like it's a complete difference. So I think at Shopify we're making that like strategic bet that the AI is going to keep accelerating, become more accessible, kind of get smarter and smarter. Also possible maybe down the road we'll see like these security focused models that are just like really, really good at the stuff that we do. That being said, like the threat volume is increasing, and just as AI is making things so much better for the defenders, it's also making it much better for the attackers, right? I'm sure most of us have read the articles about these like agentic powered attacks and all of these like this agentic powered malware that's like polymorphic, can move at a rapid speed. And it's not just like buzzwords, it's realized risk that we're kind of seeing day to day. I've seen malware that like uses the on-device AI to kind of do what it's trying to do and accomplish its goals. Further, I think for attackers, it's just going to keep getting cheaper and cheaper. For stuff that like 2 years ago we would have said like, that looks like nation state behavior, you know, this is so sophisticated, so complex. That could just be in a kid in the basement now that's just like really good at using AI. So I think it is like concerning, but that being said, I think this is just like the evolution of that defender versus attacker arms race, you know. So I think it's on us as defenders to just make sure that we're kind of keeping the pace with AI and kind of keep detecting more and more and like keep that pace. I also think like the future for analysts, like similar to what we kind of saw here today, analysts are kind of going to be the orchestrators of swarms of agents. So as an analyst, you're going to receive an alert. That alert's already going to have like hours of investigation done. And then at that point, they're going to start dispatching these swarms. So like an investigation agent, a threat hunting agent, detection creation agent, so on. I think as well, like my personal hypothesis for like detection is that in the future, we might move to these like rule-less detections. So kind of like I talked about earlier, like trying to detect behavior rather than like static like event or static rules. And for example, just looking across like a MITRE attack framework and saying, okay, these are like 2 raw events. Let's trigger an investigation agent against this entity and see if there's more to it. So as the attackers are getting more complex, that'll kind of allow us to keep up and detect more. So I think I'll wrap up there, but I think like the future is like, I mean, it's looking bad in terms of what the attackers are doing, but for us, it's also looking really good. Like, I think we're entering like this kind of next generation of detection and response where like we're able to detect at scales like never seen before. We're able to like move at speed we've never been able to move before, and I think that makes it really exciting for us. And I think if we're sitting here in a year or 2, I think we're going to say like, wow, we were so inefficient like back then. So yeah.